The rifle crack split the morning air before Beatrice Parrish even heard the warning shout. And suddenly, her elegant world of silk dresses and afternoon tea shattered into dust and chaos. She hit the stagecoach floor hard as the driver above cursed and snapped the reins, sending the horses into a panicked gallop across the Texas plains. Through the window, she glimpsed riders in bandanas closing fast, their guns glinting in the harsh May sunlight of 1876. "Stay down, Miss Parrish." The elderly guard shouted through the window, levering another round into his Winchester. The coach lurched violently as a wheel struck something, throwing Beatrice against the padded bench. Her traveling trunk slid across the floor, spilling expensive dresses that seemed utterly ridiculous now, as bullets punched through the wooden sides of the coach. She was 21 years old, fresh from Boston society, and she was about to die on a dusty Texas road before ever seeing the vast ranch her late father had left her. The irony was not lost on her, even in her terror. 3 months ago, she had been selecting china patterns for her trousseau, planning a wedding to a railroad magnate's son. Then the telegram arrived. Her father dead from cholera, leaving her a cattle empire she had never seen and releasing her from an engagement that had felt more like a business merger than a romance. The coach suddenly veered hard right, then stopped with bone-jarring abruptness. The shooting continued, but now she heard a different sound, the heavy thunder of more horses, shouting in unfamiliar voices. The elderly guard fell from his perch outside, landing in a heap near her window. His eyes stared unseeing at the cloudless sky. Beatrice forced herself to breathe, to think through the paralyzing fear. She reached for the small derringer she had hidden in her reticule, the one luxury her Boston finishing school had never anticipated. Her hands shook as she checked the chambers. 2 shots. If she was going to die, she would at least try to take one of the bandits with her. The door flew open. She raised the derringer, finger tightening on the trigger. "Touch me and I will shoot," she said, surprised at how steady her voice sounded. The man in the doorway raised his hands slowly, palms out. "Easy there, miss. I am not here to hurt you." His voice was low and calm, with the easy drawl of Texas born and bred. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of storm clouds. Dust covered his dark shirt and leather vest, and a Colt revolver hung low on his hip. Blood streaked his left sleeve. "Who are you?" Beatrice demanded, not lowering her weapon. "Name is Samuel Jensen. I am a deputy marshal out of Austin, and those men who just tried to rob your stage are either dead or running for Mexico right about now." He nodded toward the chaos behind him, where several other men were tending to horses and checking bodies. "The driver is shaken up but alive." Your guard was not so fortunate. Beatrice finally lowered the derringer, though she kept it in her hand. "How did you happen to be here? We have been tracking that gang for 3 weeks. Lucky for you, they led us straight to this road." Samuel Jensen stepped back from the door, giving her space. "Are you hurt, miss?" "No." Beatrice took his offered hand and stepped down from the ruined coach. Her legs felt unsteady beneath her traveling skirt. Around her, the evidence of violence was stark in the bright morning light. 4 bodies lay sprawled in the dust, and another man was being tied to his saddle, wounded but alive. The driver sat on a rock, holding his head and looking dazed. "You handled yourself well," Samuel said, nodding toward her derringer. "Most society ladies would have fainted." "I am not most society ladies." Beatrice straightened her shoulders, refusing to let him see how close she had come to that very thing. "I need to get to Gonzales. My father's ranch is near there, Parrish." Samuel's expression shifted, something like recognition crossing his features. "You would be William Parrish's daughter. I heard he passed. I am sorry for your loss. You knew my father." This surprised her. She had only vague childhood memories of him before he moved west after her mother's death, leaving Beatrice to be raised by her maternal grandmother in Boston. Knew of him. He had a good reputation in these parts. Fair man, honest, that is rare out here. Samuel looked toward his men, then back at her. "Miss Parrish, that stage is not going anywhere today. One wheel is cracked and your driver needs rest. Gonzales is 2 days' ride from here." "Then I will wait while they repair the wheel. Out here alone, with a dead guard and a shaken driver." Samuel shook his head. "Those bandits had friends. Word will spread fast about what happened here. You are carrying gold, are you not? I saw the chest when we checked the boot." Beatrice felt her stomach tighten. The chest contained $20,000 in gold coin, money she needed to keep her father's ranch running until she could get her bearings. "That is none of your concern. It became my concern the moment I pulled those bandits off your stage." His voice remained patient but firm. "Miss Parrish, you need an escort to Gonzales. My men and I are heading that way regardless. Let us see you safely there." Pride made her want to refuse. She had left Boston specifically to escape men making decisions for her, to claim the independence her unexpected inheritance offered. But she was not foolish enough to ignore reality. "What about my belongings?" "We will load what we can on the pack horses. The stage company can retrieve the rest later." Samuel turned and began issuing orders to his men. Beatrice noticed how they jumped to obey without question. Whatever else Samuel Jensen might be, he was clearly a man accustomed to command. Within an hour, her most essential belongings were redistributed among the deputy marshal's pack animals. The gold chest was secured on the strongest horse. The wounded bandit and the bodies were being sent back to the nearest town with 2 of Samuel's deputies. That left 4 men to escort her to Gonzales, including Samuel himself. "You ever ridden astride, Miss Parrish?" Samuel asked, leading a dappled gray mare toward her. Beatrice looked at the horse, then at her traveling skirt with its layers of petticoats. "I have ridden in Boston, but never like this." "Well, you are about to learn. We cannot make good time with you riding side saddle, and we need to make good time." He held the reins steady as the mare snorted softly. One of the other deputies, a stocky man with a graying beard, chuckled. "Maybe she should ride in front of you, Sam. Be more proper-like." "Nothing proper about any of this," Samuel said flatly. "Miss Parrish is capable of her own mount. Adjust those stirrups for her, Roy." Beatrice appreciated that he assumed she could handle it rather than insisting on some show of chivalry. She hitched up her skirt as modestly as possible and let Samuel give her a leg up into the saddle. The position felt strange, almost scandalous, but undeniably more secure. "We will stop frequently to rest," Samuel said, swinging up onto his own horse, a tall bay gelding. "You tell me if you need to stop sooner. Pride will get you nothing but saddle sores out here." They rode south and west, following old cattle trails across the rolling Texas landscape. The morning gave way to afternoon heat that beat down from a merciless sky. Beatrice's traveling clothes, so appropriate for a stagecoach, felt suffocating on horseback. Sweat trickled down her spine, and her legs began to ache from the unfamiliar position. Samuel rode beside her, silent for long stretches, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon. The other 3 deputies spread out in a loose formation around them. Their names were Roy, the older man with the gray beard, Michael, a lanky youth who could not have been more than 20, and Thomas, a quiet man with Native American features who spoke rarely but seemed to see everything. "Tell me about my father's ranch," Beatrice said finally, needing to break the monotonous rhythm of hoofbeats and her own worried thoughts. Samuel glanced at her. "The double P. It is good land. Your father built it up from nothing over 20 years. He ran about 3,000 head of cattle last I heard, had a dozen men working for him. The house is solid, made of stone and timber. He built it to last. Did you know him personally? Met him a few times. He came into town for supplies to conduct business. Like I said, he had a good reputation. Samuel paused, then added, "This country has a way of showing what a man is really made of. Your father proved himself to be solid." "And what does it show about women?" Beatrice asked, with an edge to her voice. Samuel looked at her directly then, something that might have been respect in his gray eyes. "Same thing. Character does not care about your sex, Miss Parrish. The land will test you just as hard either way." They rode in silence for a while longer. Beatrice found herself watching Samuel from the corner of her eye. He moved with his horse like they were one creature, easy and natural. His face was weathered from sun and wind, with lines around his eyes that spoke of years spent squinting across distant horizons. She judged him to be perhaps 26 or 27, young for a deputy marshal but clearly experienced. "How long have you been a lawman?" she asked. 5 years. Started as a town deputy in Austin, worked my way up." He pointed toward a line of trees in the distance. "We will stop there for a rest. There is a creek, and the horses need water." The creek was shallow but clear, running over smooth rocks worn by countless years of flow. Beatrice knelt on the bank and splashed cool water on her face while the men tended to the horses. Her reflection in the water looked foreign to her, hair coming loose from its pins, dust on her cheeks. She looked more alive than she had in months of Boston parlors and society teas. "Here." Samuel held out a canteen and a piece of dried beef wrapped in cloth. "You need to eat. We still have hours to go before we make camp." "Camp?" Beatrice took the offerings, suddenly aware of how hungry she was. "We are sleeping outdoors. Cannot make Gonzales in one day, not with the late start. We will find a good spot before dark." He crouched beside the creek, refilling his own canteen. "Tomorrow afternoon we should reach town." Beatrice had not slept outdoors once in her entire life, but she forced herself to nod as though this was perfectly normal. "Of course." Samuel's mouth quirked slightly, not quite a smile. "You are tougher than you look, Miss Parrish. That will serve you well here." "Is that a compliment, Marshal Jensen?" Statement of fact. He stood, water dripping from the canteen. "We should move on. I want to make another 10 miles before sunset." The afternoon stretched long and hot. Beatrice's thighs burned from gripping the saddle, and her back ached from the constant motion. But she refused to complain, refused to ask Samuel to slow down. If this was a test of her character, she would pass it. When they finally stopped for the night, the sun was painting the western sky in shades of orange and purple. They made camp in a grove of cottonwoods near another creek, a natural shelter that offered protection on 3 sides. The deputies moved with practiced efficiency, unsaddling horses, starting a fire, setting up a watch rotation. Samuel spread a bedroll near the fire for Beatrice. "You take this spot. It is warmest and most protected." "Where will you sleep?" "I have the first watch. After that, wherever I fall." He handed her a tin plate with beans and bacon. "It is not fancy, but it is hot." Beatrice ate hungrily, too tired to care that she was sitting on the ground in a wrinkled traveling dress, eating from a tin plate with her fingers. The food tasted better than any elaborate Boston dinner she could remember. Samuel sat across the fire, cleaning his revolver with practiced motions. The firelight played across his features, highlighting the hard planes of his face. He had removed his vest and rolled up his sleeves, revealing muscular forearms marked with old scars. "That blood on your sleeve earlier," Beatrice said. "Were you shot? Just a graze?" Roy patched it up. He did not look up from his work. "I have had worse." "Does it not frighten you?" being shot at, chasing dangerous men. Samuel finally looked up, his gray eyes reflecting the firelight. Fear is useful if you use it right, makes you careful, makes you think. But you cannot let it control you or you are already dead. He snapped the cylinder back into place. You did well today, holding that Derringer steady even though you were terrified. How did you know I was terrified? Because you are not stupid. Samuel set the revolver aside. You should sleep, Miss Parrish. Tomorrow will be another long day. Beatrice settled onto the bedroll, using her folded traveling cloak as a pillow. Above her, stars began to appear in the darkening sky, more stars than she had ever seen in her life. The city lights of Boston had hidden this vast tapestry. Out here, the universe seemed infinite. She woke once in the night to find Samuel sitting by the rebuilt fire, keeping watch. His profile was sharp against the flames, alert and watchful. Something about his presence made her feel safe despite the wild country surrounding them. She drifted back to sleep with that thought. Morning came with the smell of coffee and the sound of men breaking camp. Beatrice's whole body ached from the previous day's ride, muscles protesting as she forced herself to stand. She tried not to let her discomfort show as she accepted a cup of strong black coffee from Roy. Your first trail ride, the older deputy asked kindly. That obvious. You will get used to it. Few more days, you will be riding like you were born in the saddle. He gestured toward a line of bushes. There is some privacy behind those if you need it before we head out. The day's ride was harder than the first. Every muscle screamed its complaint, and the sun seemed even more brutal than before. But Beatrice set her jaw and kept pace, refusing to be the one who slowed them down. Samuel rode beside her, occasionally glancing over but saying little. She could not tell if his silence was natural reserve or disapproval. Around midday, Thomas suddenly raised his hand, bringing the group to a halt. He pointed toward the eastern horizon where a thin column of smoke rose against the blue sky. Trouble? Michael asked, his hand moving toward his rifle. Could be. Samuel studied the smoke for a long moment. That is coming from near the old Jenkins homestead. Thomas, ride ahead and scout. Stay low. The rest of us will approach slow. Thomas kicked his horse into a gallop, quickly disappearing over a rise. The remaining group continued forward at a walk, tension crackling in the air. Samuel positioned his horse slightly ahead of Beatrice's, a subtle shield. What do you think it is? Beatrice asked quietly. Could be anything. Brush fire, chimney smoke, or raiders. Samuel's hand rested on his revolver. We will know soon enough. Thomas reappeared 20 minutes later, his face grim. The Jenkins place is burned. Looks like it happened last night or early this morning. No one there now, but I found tracks heading west. 6 or 7 riders. The same gang we hit yesterday, Roy asked. Could be the rest of them coming for revenge. Samuel turned to Beatrice. Miss Parrish, we need to check that homestead, see if anyone needs help. Are you comfortable waiting here with Michael while we investigate? I would prefer to come with you. It might not be something a lady should see. Beatrice met his eyes steadily. If I am going to live in this country, I need to understand what it is really like. I am not a child to be sheltered. Samuel studied her for a moment, then nodded. Stay close to me. The Jenkins homestead was a ruin. The cabin had burned to the ground, leaving only a stone chimney standing like a grave marker. Smoke still rose from the collapsed timbers. The barn had been spared, its doors standing open, livestock gone. They found the family in the yard. Beatrice had thought herself prepared, but the sight made her stomach clench. 2 adults and an older child, not killed by the fire but by bullets. They had been dead for hours. Samuel dismounted and checked the bodies, his face carefully blank. Jenkins, his wife, and their son. Their daughter is missing. She was about 15 last I knew. Taken, Thomas said flatly, reading the tracks. 2 days ago, maybe 3, the fire was set to cover it up. We need to go after them, Michael said, fury coloring his voice. They have that girl, we will. Samuel's voice was hard as iron. But first we see Miss Parrish safely to Gonzales with her gold. Then we come back with more men and run these bastards down. He looked at Beatrice. I am sorry you had to see this. Do not apologize. Beatrice's voice was shaking, but she kept her gaze steady. You are right that I needed to understand. This is real. This is what happens out here. Samuel helped Roy and Thomas dig graves while Michael stood guard. Beatrice insisted on helping, using a broken board to move dirt, ruining her traveling dress further. If she was going to be part of this country, she would not stand aside while others did the hard work. When the grim task was finished and they had marked the graves with stones, Samuel led them back to the horses. We ride hard now. I want to reach Gonzales before dark. Those raiders are still out there and they know about the gold shipment by now. How would they know? Beatrice asked. Someone talked in town, or they have been watching the stage routes. Either way, we cannot assume we are safe. Samuel checked his weapons, then helped Beatrice mount despite her exhausted muscles. Can you handle a hard ride? I will manage. They pushed the horses to a steady canter, eating up the miles. The landscape began to change, becoming more settled. They passed other ranches, fields of cattle, signs of civilization. As the sun lowered toward the horizon, they crested a hill and Beatrice saw Gonzales spread out below. It was not a large town, perhaps a few hundred residents, but it looked like salvation after 2 days of hard riding and sleeping on the ground. The main street boasted a general store, a hotel, a bank, a saloon, a church, and various other businesses. People moved about in the golden evening light, going about their ordinary lives. Your father's ranch is about 5 miles west of town, Samuel said as they rode down the main street. But we will get you settled at the hotel tonight. Tomorrow, I will take you out there personally and make sure everything is secure. You have done more than enough, Marshal Jensen. Beatrice straightened in her saddle despite her exhaustion. I can manage from here. Your father's foreman is a man named Carl Hayes. Good man, but he is not expecting you. Better if someone makes introductions. Samuel stopped in front of the hotel, a 2-story building with a wide porch. Besides, those raiders are still out there. Until we catch them, I want to make sure you are safe. Your safety matters more than gold, Roy said, unstrapping her trunk from the pack horse. That is what Sam always says, and he means it. Beatrice looked at Samuel, who was studiously checking his horse's bridle to avoid meeting her eyes. Something warm stirred in her chest, a feeling she could not quite name. Thank you, she said quietly. All of you, I would not have made it here without you. Just doing our job, miss. But Samuel's expression softened slightly when he finally looked at her. Get some rest. I will be by in the morning to take you to the ranch. The hotel room was simple but clean, with a real bed and a wash basin with actual hot water. Beatrice scrubbed away 2 days of trail dust, changed into a relatively clean dress from her salvaged trunk, and then fell onto the bed. Every muscle in her body throbbed, but she had made it. She was in Gonzales, mere miles from the ranch that was now her responsibility. Sleep claimed her quickly, deep and dreamless. A knock on her door woke her at dawn. Samuel's voice came through the wood. Miss Parrish, are you awake? Beatrice struggled upright, her body even stiffer than the day before. Give me a moment. She dressed quickly in her most practical outfit, a simple blue cotton dress that had seemed so plain in Boston but was still far too fancy for ranch life. When she opened the door, Samuel was waiting in the hallway, hat in hand. He had cleaned up as well, his dark hair still damp, his shirt relatively free of dust. Morning, he said. I brought you something. He held out a bundle wrapped in brown paper. "Thought you might need more suitable clothes for ranch work." Beatrice unwrapped it to find a split riding skirt and a simple cotton blouse, the kind frontier women wore. "Where did you get these?" asked the general store owner to put together something appropriate. "I guessed at the size." A slight flush colored his weathered cheeks. "Just seemed practical. It is thoughtful, thank you." Beatrice felt that warm stirring again, stronger this time. "Give me 5 minutes to change." The riding skirt was a revelation, allowing her to sit a horse properly without fighting layers of petticoats. She braided her hair in a single plait down her back, the way she had seen some frontier women wear theirs, and studied herself in the small mirror. She looked different. She felt different. Samuel was waiting downstairs with the horses. His approval was silent but evident in the slight nod he gave her. "Looks better suited for ranch work." "Will I shock the locals?" Beatrice asked as she mounted the gray mare, now riding with much more comfort than 2 days ago. "Out here, practical beats propriety every time." Samuel swung onto his bay. "Let us go see your inheritance." They rode west out of town, following a well-worn road that cut through gently rolling country. Cattle dotted the landscape, sturdy longhorns grazing on the spring grass. The morning air was cool and fresh, promising another hot day but not yet delivered. "Your father started with nothing," Samuel said as they rode. "Came west after the war, bought a small piece of land and built it up. He was one of the first ranchers in this area to improve his stock, bringing in better breeding bulls. Other ranchers thought he was crazy, but it paid off. His beef commands premium prices. You know a lot about his operation. I make it my business to know the people in my territory. Helps me do my job better." Samuel pointed ahead. "That is the boundary of your land. See that fence line?" Beatrice saw sturdy wooden posts stretching into the distance, strung with wire. Beyond it, the land looked the same as before, but knowing it belonged to her made it different somehow. This was hers. Responsibility and possibility in equal measure. The ranch house came into view over a rise, and Beatrice caught her breath. It was beautiful in a stark, practical way. 2 stories of gray stone and timber, with a wide porch wrapping around the front. Outbuildings clustered nearby, a large barn, a bunkhouse, corrals, and storage sheds. Smoke rose from the chimney. People moved about, going about the morning work. A man emerged from the barn as they approached, tall and lean with a weathered face and iron-gray hair. He stopped when he saw them, his eyes widening as he took in Beatrice. "Carl Hayes," Samuel called. "That is right." The man's gaze remained fixed on Beatrice. "And unless I am mistaken, you would be Miss Parrish. You have your father's eyes." Beatrice dismounted, suddenly nervous. "I am Beatrice Parrish. This is my land now." "Yes, miss. We heard about William passing. All of us here were sorry to hear it. He was a good man." Carl Hayes pulled off his hat respectfully. "We have been keeping things running, waiting for word about what would happen next." "What happens next is that I am here now." Beatrice forced her voice to remain steady and confident. "I intend to learn this business and run this ranch as my father would have wanted." Carl's weathered face split into a slow smile. "Well, that is good to hear." Some of the men were worried the place would be sold off. "This is their home." He looked at Samuel. "Marshal Jensen, did not expect to see you escort her here. Miss Parrish ran into some trouble on the way. We are still tracking a gang that hit her stage." Samuel's voice turned serious. "You need to be on alert here. They killed the Jenkins family and took the daughter. They know about the gold shipment Miss Parrish was carrying." Carl's expression darkened. "We will post guards. Got enough men here to defend this place if it comes to that." "I hope it does not come to that," Samuel said, "but better prepared than sorry." The rest of the morning passed in a blur of introductions and information. Carl showed Beatrice through the house, explaining the systems her father had set up. The house was more comfortable than she had expected, with sturdy furniture and evidence of her father's life in every room. His bedroom still held his clothes, his books, his pipe on the nightstand. "We did not know what to do with his personal things," Carl said quietly. "Seemed wrong to pack them up without family here." Beatrice touched the worn spine of a book on the bedside table. It was a collection of poetry, the same book her mother used to read to her as a child. Seeing it here, evidence that her father had kept this small piece of his old life, made tears sting her eyes. "Thank you for waiting." Samuel found her there an hour later, sitting in her father's chair, looking through a leather-bound ledger that documented 20 years of ranch operations. His handwriting filled every page, neat and precise. "Learning the business?" Samuel asked from the doorway, trying to. "There is so much I do not understand." Beatrice closed the ledger. "He recorded everything, every cow born, every sale, every expense. It is like reading his life story written in numbers. Carl can teach you the rest. He was your father's right hand." Samuel leaned against the doorframe. "But that will take time. For now, you need to know you are safe here. I talked to Carl about security. They will post guards until we catch that gang. Will you be the one chasing them, soon as I get back to town and organize a posse? Thomas is already tracking them. We will get that Jenkins girl back if we can." His expression was grim. "And make sure those men answer for what they did." Beatrice stood, suddenly not wanting him to leave. The thought surprised her with its intensity. She had known this man for only 2 days, yet his presence had become a strange comfort. "When will I see you again?" "When I bring those raiders to justice." Samuel straightened, settling his hat back on his head. "In the meantime, you have work to do here. This ranch will not run itself, and you have a lot to learn. Marshal Jensen." Beatrice crossed the room to stand before him. "Samuel, I know I already thanked you, but I want you to understand how much your protection means." He looked down at her, and for a moment something flickered in his gray eyes, something warm and complicated. "Your safety matters more than gold, Miss Parrish. Remember that. This country can be dangerous, especially for a woman alone. I am not alone. I have 12 ranch hands and a foreman. That is not what I meant." But he did not explain further. "I need to go. You be careful, Beatrice Parrish." She watched from the porch as he rode away, his tall figure gradually disappearing into the distance. The use of her first name echoed in her mind, intimate despite the formal way he had said it. "He is a good man," Carl said, appearing beside her. "One of the best lawmen in Texas. If anyone can catch those raiders, it will be Samuel Jensen." "Tell me about the ranch," Beatrice said, forcing her mind back to practical matters. "Everything I need to know." Carl spent the rest of the day educating her. She learned about breeding cycles and market prices, about water rights and grazing rotation. She met the ranch hands, a weathered collection of cowboys who eyed her with barely concealed skepticism, until she asked intelligent questions and proved she was there to learn, not just collect profits. She fell into bed that night in her father's house, exhausted but with a strange sense of purpose. This was real work, meaningful work. For the first time in her life, she was building something rather than just being ornamental in someone else's world. The days settled into a rhythm. Beatrice rose at dawn and worked until dark, learning everything Carl could teach her. She learned to read cattle brands and assess livestock condition. She rode the fence lines with the hands, checking for breaks and weak posts. She got rope burns on her hands and sunburn on her face, and she had never felt more alive. A week after her arrival, a rider came from town with a telegram. It was from her grandmother in Boston, demanding to know when Beatrice was returning to civilization and her responsibilities there. Beatrice read it twice, then handed it to Carl. "What do you want me to tell the telegraph operator when I go to town?" he asked. "Tell him to reply that I am exactly where I belong, doing exactly what I should be doing." Beatrice looked out over the land, her land. "I am not going back." Carl grinned. "Your father would have been proud of you, Miss Beatrice." 2 weeks became 3. Samuel had not returned, but word filtered up from town about the pursuit of the raiding gang. They were heading deeper into rough country, evading the posse. The Jenkins girl had not been found. The uncertainty gnawed at Beatrice, though she could not entirely explain why. Was it concern for the missing girl, or something more personal? Then one evening, as the sun was setting and she was finishing her accounts in her father's study, now truly her study, Carl knocked on the door. "Miss Beatrice, Marshal Jensen is here. He looks rough." Beatrice was on her feet immediately, hurrying to the front door. Samuel stood on the porch, his horse tied to the rail behind him. He looked haggard, thinner than she remembered, with a new scar across his cheekbone and exhaustion etched deep in his features. "We got them," he said without preamble. "Tracked them to a canyon in the hill country. There was a fight. 2 of my deputies were wounded, but we got the raiders. All of them. The girl, safe, traumatized but alive. We got her to a doctor in Austin, sent word to her relatives in Missouri." Samuel swayed slightly, and Beatrice realized he was operating on pure determination. "I wanted you to know you are safe now. They are all either dead or in custody waiting for trial." "Come inside," Beatrice said firmly. "You need food and rest. I should get back to town. You will fall off your horse before you make it halfway. Come inside. That is not a request, Marshal Jensen." A ghost of a smile crossed his exhausted face. "Yes, madam." She installed him in the dining room while she went to the kitchen and put together a meal herself, having sent the ranch cook home hours ago. When she returned with a plate of cold chicken, fresh bread, and cheese, Samuel was half asleep in his chair. "Eat," she ordered. "Then you are staying here tonight. We have spare rooms." "Miss Parrish, I cannot." "You can and you will." "What would people say if I let Texas's finest marshal fall off his horse from exhaustion after he saved my life?" She sat across from him, watching until he began to eat. "Tell me what happened." Between bites, he told the story, the week-long chase through increasingly rough terrain, the canyon trap that had nearly gone wrong, the firefight that left 2 raiders dead and the rest surrendering, finding the Jenkins girl chained in their camp, the long ride back to civilization. "She will recover," Samuel said. "Young women are tougher than people think. She has family who will take care of her." "Like me?" Beatrice asked quietly. "Tougher than people think." Samuel looked at her directly then, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "You are one of the strongest people I have met, Beatrice Parrish, man or woman. You took everything this country threw at you and did not break. I wanted to break several times, but you did not. That is what matters." He pushed away his empty plate. "Thank you for the food. Go upstairs and sleep. Second door on the right. I will wake you in the morning." For once, he did not argue. Beatrice watched him climb the stairs, his exhaustion evident in every movement. She knew she should feel nothing but gratitude for his protection, but the feeling in her chest was more complicated than that. It had been growing since that first moment when he appeared at the stagecoach door, and it frightened her with its intensity. She had come west to escape an arranged marriage, to claim her independence. Falling for a deputy marshal had not been part of her plan. But then, nothing about the past month had gone according to plan. Beatrice woke before dawn and made coffee, then went out to help with the morning feeding. When she returned to the house, Samuel was in the kitchen, looking more rested but still bearing the marks of his ordeal. "You should have woken me," he said. "I need to get back to town. Have coffee first." Beatrice poured him a cup, then one for herself. They stood in the kitchen together as the sun rose, painting the world in shades of gold and orange. The silence between them was comfortable, companionable. "I am glad you are staying," Samuel said finally. "Here in Texas, I mean. When you first arrived, I thought you would sell the place and run back to Boston at the first hardship." "I thought that too," Beatrice admitted. "But this place, this life, it fits me in a way Boston never did. I did not know I was incomplete until I came here. This country has a way of showing you who you really are." Samuel set down his cup. "Beatrice, I need to tell you something." Her heart began to beat faster. "Yes. When I pulled those bandits off your stage, when I saw you sitting there with that little Derringer, refusing to be a victim, something in me just—" He stopped, struggling with the words. "I have seen a lot of people in my work. Most of them fold when things get hard, but you did not fold. You stood up, and these past weeks, watching you learn this business, become a part of this land, I realize I was wrong earlier." "Wrong about what?" "I said you were not alone because you had your ranch hands, but that is not what I meant. What I meant was—" Samuel took a breath. "What I meant was that I hope you are not alone, because I would very much like to be part of your life if you will have me." Beatrice felt like the world had tilted on its axis. "Samuel Jensen, are you asking to court me? I know I have no right. I am just a lawman with no land, no wealth. You are an heiress with a vast ranch. But these weeks without seeing you, tracking those raiders, all I could think about was getting back here, getting back to you." He met her eyes steadily. "So yes, I am asking to court you, if that is not too presumptuous." Beatrice set down her own cup carefully, her hands trembling slightly. "I came west to escape a marriage that was about business and social standing, where I was just a prize to be won. I swore I would never marry unless it was for love." She stepped closer to him. "But I never expected to find it so quickly, or with a man who sees me as strong rather than fragile, as capable rather than ornamental." "Then you feel it too?" Samuel's voice was rough with emotion. "Yes." Beatrice closed the remaining distance between them. "Yes, I feel it too." He kissed her then, gentle and questioning at first, then deeper as she responded. His hands came up to frame her face, careful despite their strength. When they finally broke apart, Beatrice was breathless. "I should probably do this properly," Samuel said. "Call on you at appropriate times, bring flowers, speak to your family." "My family is a grandmother in Boston who thinks I have gone mad." Beatrice laughed. "And proper calling hours seem ridiculous when you have already saved my life and slept under my roof. People will talk. Let them talk. I am done living my life according to what other people think." She took his hand. "But I want to do this right too. I want to know you, Samuel Jensen, not just the marshal, but the man. I want you to know me beyond the grateful woman you rescued. I already know you are brave and smart and determined." Samuel squeezed her hand. "But yes, let us do this properly. Let me court you the way you deserve." He left an hour later, riding back to town to deal with the aftermath of the raider situation. But he returned 3 days later with a bouquet of wildflowers and a formal invitation to dinner in town. Beatrice accepted both with a smile that made her face hurt. Their courtship became the talk of Gonzales. The deputy marshal and the ranch heiress made an unlikely couple by Eastern standards, but the town approved. Samuel Jensen had earned respect through years of honest work, and Beatrice Parrish was proving herself daily as a capable ranch owner who treated her workers fairly. Samuel called on her every week when his duties allowed, sometimes more often. They went on picnics by the creek that ran through her property. They attended town socials together. He taught her to shoot properly, laughing as she proved to be a better shot than he expected. She showed him her account books and business plans, and he offered suggestions that showed an understanding of ranching she had not expected from a lawman. "My father had a small ranch before the war," he explained one evening as they sat on her porch watching the sunset. "I grew up around cattle. Became a lawman because I wanted to make things better, safer, but I still love this life. Do you miss it, having your own land?" "Sometimes. But being a marshal matters to me. This country needs law and order, needs people willing to stand up for what is right." He looked at her. "Though I admit the idea of settling down has become more appealing lately." Beatrice leaned against his shoulder, comfortable in a way she had never been with anyone before. "I never asked you about your family. You know all about my absent father and disapproving grandmother, but you have told me little about your own people." "Not much to tell. My mother died when I was young, my father during the war. I have a sister in San Antonio, married with 3 children. We write occasionally." Samuel's arm came around her shoulders. "But mostly I have been alone, by choice really. My work is dangerous. I never wanted to leave a widow behind. And now I have met someone worth the risk." He tilted her face up to kiss her. "Someone who understands danger and does not run from it." Summer deepened into fall. The ranch prospered under Beatrice's management, with Carl's guidance. She hired 2 more hands and began making improvements her father had planned but never completed. The cattle were rounded up and driven to market, bringing in enough profit to secure the ranch's future for another year. Samuel continued his work as a marshal, disappearing sometimes for weeks to chase outlaws or testify at trials. Beatrice worried every time he left, but she never asked him to stop. She understood that his work was part of who he was, just as the ranch was part of her. Then in November, 6 months after their first meeting, Samuel arrived at her ranch in mid-afternoon when he should have been working. He found her in the barn, helping a ranch hand deliver a difficult calf. She was covered in blood and dust and hay, hair falling out of its braid, but Samuel looked at her as though she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. "Miss Parrish, I need to speak with you. Can it wait? This calf is breech, and we need to turn it before we lose both cow and baby." Samuel shed his coat, rolled up his sleeves, and climbed into the stall. "Tell me what to do." Together, they worked for the next hour, following the experienced hand's instructions until finally the calf slipped free, wet and bleeding. The cow lowed softly, exhausted but alive. They climbed out of the stall, both filthy and sweating despite the cool November day. "Now, what did you need to tell me?" Beatrice asked, wiping her face with a rag. Samuel pulled a small box from his pocket, somehow still clean despite their work. "I need to ask you something, and it cannot wait another minute because I have been carrying this box around for a week waiting for the perfect moment, and I just realized that this is the perfect moment. You covered in muck, helping a cow give birth, being exactly who you are." Beatrice's breath caught as he opened the box to reveal a simple gold band set with a small diamond. "Beatrice Parrish, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life beside you, building this ranch, protecting this land, loving you? I do not have much to offer except my heart and my promise that I will always see you as the strong, capable, amazing woman you are." Tears spilled down Beatrice's cheeks, cutting tracks through the dust. "Yes, yes, Samuel Jensen, I will marry you. Though we are both covered in cow blood, and this is the least romantic proposal setting possible." "I disagree." Samuel slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her close despite their filthy states. "This is who we are, practical, stubborn, willing to get our hands dirty. This is perfect." He kissed her there in the barn, with the ranch hand cheering and the new calf bleeding and everything smelling of animals and hay and honest work. And Beatrice thought he was right. This was perfect. They were married in December, just before Christmas, in the small church in Gonzales. The whole town turned out for the wedding. Beatrice wore her mother's dress, altered to fit, simple white silk that looked lovely but practical enough for a frontier wedding. Samuel wore a new black suit that made him look uncomfortable, though his eyes never left her face. Roy and Thomas served as Samuel's groomsmen. The wives of two prominent ranchers stood up with Beatrice, women who had welcomed her into their frontier society without judgment. Carl Hayes gave her away, standing in for the father who should have been there. William would have been proud, Carl whispered as he placed her hand in Samuel's, and he would have approved of this man. The ceremony was simple and short. They spoke their vows in steady voices, promising to love and honor each other for the rest of their lives. When the minister pronounced them married and Samuel kissed her, the church erupted in applause. The reception was held at the hotel, with food and music and dancing that lasted well into the night. Beatrice danced until her feet hurt, Samuel spinning her around the floor with surprising grace for a man who claimed he never danced. "Where did you learn to dance?" she asked, breathless and laughing. "I never said I could not dance. I said I did not usually dance. There is a difference." He pulled her closer. "But for you, I will dance until dawn if you want." They spent their wedding night at the ranch, in the master bedroom that had been her father's and was now theirs. Samuel carried her over the threshold with an ease that made her laugh, then set her down carefully in the center of the room. "Are you nervous?" he asked softly, his hands coming up to frame her face. "A little," Beatrice admitted, "but mostly I am happy. Happier than I ever thought I could be." He kissed her then, gentle and patient, and showed her a tenderness that made tears spring to her eyes. They had both been alone for so long, both so convinced they did not need anyone else. But together, they were more than the sum of their parts. They were complete. Samuel moved into the ranch permanently after the wedding, though he remained a deputy marshal. The arrangement worked surprisingly well. The ranch gave him a base of operations, and Beatrice's position in the community gave him contacts and information that helped his work. When he was gone on marshal business, she ran the ranch with Carl's help. When he was home, he proved to be a skilled cattleman who could handle any job that needed doing. Their first Christmas together was simple but joyful. They decorated the house with pine boughs and shared gifts by the fireplace. Samuel gave her a new saddle custom-made for her smaller frame. She gave him a fine rifle he had been eyeing in the general store window for months. "We are both terrible at romantic gifts," Beatrice said, laughing as she admired the saddle's craftsmanship. "We are both practical people, nothing wrong with that." Samuel pulled her into his lap. "Though I should tell you I have another gift for you, something less practical." "Oh." "I am putting in a request to transfer to the local district. No more long trips chasing outlaws across half of Texas. I will be the law for this county, based right here in Gonzales." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I want to be here with you, build our life together. Maybe start a family." Beatrice felt her heart swell until it seemed too large for her chest. "You would give up being a deputy marshal for me." "I would not be giving it up, just changing how I do it, and not for you, for us, for the life we are building." Samuel kissed her forehead. "Your safety matters more than gold, remember? Well, our future together matters more than chasing glory as a marshal. I want to be here with you every day. I want to raise children who know their father. I want to build something that lasts. Then let us build it together." Beatrice kissed him. Everything together from now on. Spring came, and with it the confirmation of Samuel's transfer. He became the primary lawman for the county, with an office in Gonzales and jurisdiction over the surrounding territory. The work was steadier, less dangerous, though still important. Samuel seemed more at peace than Beatrice had ever seen him. splitting his time between ranch work and keeping order in the growing community. In May, a year after they first met, Beatrice realized she was pregnant. She told Samuel one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, a ritual they had maintained throughout their marriage. "I saw the doctor in town today," she said quietly. "He confirmed what I suspected. We are going to have a baby in December." Samuel went very still, then turned to look at her with wonder in his eyes. "A baby? We are going to have a baby?" "Yes." Beatrice took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "Are you happy?" Happy does not begin to cover it. His voice was rough with emotion. "Beatrice, you have given me everything I never knew I wanted. A home, a partner, and now a child. I do not have words for how much I love you." "Then show me," she whispered, and he did. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Beatrice continued to work the ranch throughout, though Samuel and Carl both fussed over her incessantly. She found their concern touching rather than stifling. These men who lived in such a harsh land were tender with her, protective without being controlling. In December, during the first cold snap of winter, Beatrice went into labor. The local midwife attended, along with the doctor from town. Samuel paced outside the bedroom, pale and anxious, until Roy arrived and forced him to sit down. "Women have been doing this since the dawn of time," Roy said firmly. "Your Beatrice is strong. She will be fine." "What if something goes wrong?" Samuel's usual calm had deserted him. "What if I lose her?" "You will not. Have faith." 8 hours later, the baby's cry echoed through the house. The midwife opened the door, smiling broadly. "You have a son, Marshal Jensen, and your wife is asking for you." Samuel bolted into the room. Beatrice lay in the bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a small bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up as he entered, her smile tired but genuine. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Samuel crossed to the bed and looked down at the tiny face peering out from the blankets. The baby had dark hair like his and Beatrice's blue eyes. He was perfect. "He is beautiful," Samuel whispered, gently touching one small hand. The baby's fingers wrapped around his, gripping with surprising strength. "He is perfect. What should we name him?" Beatrice asked. They had discussed names for months without reaching a decision. But looking at his son, Samuel suddenly knew. "William, after your father, William Samuel Jensen." Beatrice's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, perfect." The baby changed everything and nothing. The ranch work continued, the law work continued, but now they had this tiny person depending on them. Samuel proved to be a devoted father, sitting up with the baby at night so Beatrice could rest, carrying him in a sling while doing chores, teaching him to see the beauty in the wild Texas landscape, even before he was old enough to understand. William grew from baby to toddler, strong and healthy. When he was 2, Beatrice discovered she was pregnant again. Their daughter arrived in the fall, a tiny red-faced bundle they named Sarah after Samuel's mother. Life settled into a rich, full rhythm. The ranch prospered. Samuel's reputation as a fair but firm lawman grew. Their children thrived. Beatrice had never imagined she could be this happy, this fulfilled. The wild Texas land that had terrified her at first had become home in every sense of the word. One evening when William was 5 and Sarah was 3, the family sat together on the porch watching the sunset. It had become a tradition, this quiet time together at the end of each day. William was explaining in elaborate detail how he had helped one of the hands fix a fence, while Sarah was more interested in the moths beginning to flutter in the lamplight. "You ever miss Boston?" Samuel asked Beatrice quietly while the children were distracted. "Never." Beatrice leaned against his shoulder. "That was not real life. This is real. Sometimes I cannot even remember who I was before I came here. You were brave and strong and determined. You still are. You just did not know it yet." Samuel kissed the top of her head. You know what tomorrow is? Tuesday. It is 6 years to the day since I pulled those bandits off your stagecoach. 6 years since I met the woman who would change my entire life. Beatrice turned to look at him. Has it really been 6 years? It feels like both yesterday and forever. The best 6 years of my life. Samuel took her hand, the gesture still as tender as it had been when they were courting. I have been thinking about something. Next month my term as county marshal is up. I have been offered the position of territorial judge. It would mean giving up field work entirely, becoming a full-time judge based here in Gonzales. Is that what you want? I want to be here with you and our children. I want to watch them grow up, not miss years of their lives chasing outlaws. Samuel looked out over the land they had built together. I want to continue making this country safer, but from a courtroom instead of a saddle. And I want to help you run this ranch, really run it, be a full partner in everything. What do you think? I think that sounds perfect. Beatrice squeezed his hand. Judge Jensen, it suits you. Judge and Mrs. Jensen, ranchers and parents. Samuel smiled. Not bad for a lawman with nothing and an heiress who just wanted to escape. We found something better than escape, Beatrice said. We found home. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun finally disappeared below the horizon. William had fallen asleep against Samuel's side, and Sarah was drowsing in Beatrice's lap. The evening was cool and peaceful, filled with the sounds of the ranch settling down for the night. Samuel accepted the judgeship and hung up his marshal's badge. He proved to be as fair and honest as a judge as he had been as a lawman, earning respect across the territory. The ranch continued to grow under their joint management. Beatrice introduced innovations she learned from agricultural journals, while Samuel used his connections to secure better markets for their beef. 3 years later, a third child arrived, another boy they named James. The house was filled with noise and life, with children running through the halls and mud tracked across the floors and laughter echoing off the stone walls. It was everything Beatrice's proper Boston upbringing had taught her to avoid, and everything she had not known she needed. Carl Hayes retired when William was 10, turning over his foreman duties to a younger man, but staying on the ranch in a small cottage Beatrice and Samuel built for him. He became a beloved grandfather figure to the children, teaching them about cattle and horses and the land their mother had made her own. You did good here, Carl told Beatrice one afternoon as they watched William and Sarah help with the spring branding. Better than good. You made this place something special. We made it something special, Beatrice corrected. You, me, Samuel, all the people who work here. It is not just my ranch. It is all of ours. Carl nodded, satisfied. That is why it works. Your father knew a ranch was more than land and cattle. It is people, community. You understood that. The years continued to pass, marked by seasons and roundups, by children growing and changing, by cattle drives and court sessions, and all the rhythms of frontier life. William grew tall and serious, fascinated by the law like his father. Sarah was wild and free, happiest on horseback racing across the open range. James was the dreamer, always with a book or drawing elaborate pictures of the world around him. When William turned 18, he announced his intention to study law and follow his father into the judiciary. Sarah declared she would run the ranch when Beatrice was ready to step back. James talked about going east to art school, wanting to capture the beauty of the frontier before it changed too much. They are all so different, Beatrice said to Samuel one night as they prepared for bed. They were in their 40s now, both marked by sun and wind and years of hard work, but still strong. Did we do right by them, letting them be themselves instead of pushing them into predetermined roles? We gave them the same thing this land gave us, Samuel said, pulling her close. the freedom to discover who they really are. I think we did just fine." On their 20th wedding anniversary, the whole town turned out for a celebration at the ranch. Tables were set up in the yard, filled with food. Music played, and people danced under strings of lanterns as the sun set. Beatrice and Samuel stood together watching their friends, their children, their community enjoying themselves on land they had built into something lasting. "You remember when I asked you to marry me?" Samuel asked. "In the barn, covered in cow blood, how could I forget?" "It was the least romantic and most perfect proposal in history," Beatrice laughed. "Why? Because I am amazed we made it 20 years. Not because I doubted us, but because I am so damn grateful for every single day." He turned her to face him. "You took a chance on a lawman with nothing but a badge and a promise. You built a life with me that exceeded anything I ever dreamed, and I love you more today than I did that day in the barn, which I would not have thought possible." Beatrice felt tears sting her eyes. "I love you too. You made me see my own strength, my own capability. You never tried to make me smaller so you could feel bigger. You just loved me exactly as I am." They kissed there in front of everyone, and the crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Their children made exaggerated gagging sounds, which made everyone laugh. It was perfect and messy and real, just like their life together. The years continued their steady march. William went east to law school, then returned to Gonzales to practice, eventually becoming a lawyer and then following his father onto the bench. Sarah took over more of the ranch operations, proving herself to be even more innovative than her mother. She married a neighboring rancher's son, combining the two properties into an even larger operation. James did go east to study art, but returned every summer, ultimately settling in San Antonio, where he could paint and still be close to family. Samuel stepped down from the bench when he turned 60, deciding it was time for younger minds to interpret the law. He spent his days helping with the ranch and his grandchildren, of which there were eventually 7, a boisterous crew that kept him young. Beatrice continued running the business side of the ranch well into her 60s, finally passing the reins to Sarah when she was 65. But she never stopped being involved, never stopped caring about the land that had become so much a part of who she was. They grew old together on that Texas ranch, watching the frontier slowly become more civilized while never quite losing its wild heart. They saw the railroad come through, saw Gonzales grow from a small town to a thriving city, saw Texas change from a rough territory to an established state. On a warm spring evening when they were both in their 70s, Samuel and Beatrice sat together on their porch as they had done nearly every evening for 50 years. Their children were grown with children of their own. The ranch thrived under Sarah's management. The house was quiet, just the two of them again like in the beginning. "You remember the first time we sat here together?" Beatrice asked, her hand in Samuel's. Both their hands were marked with age spots and arthritis now, but their grips remained strong. "I remember every moment we have shared," Samuel said. "From that first day when you pointed a derringer at me to this very second, all of it, every day, has been a gift." "Your safety matters more than gold," Beatrice quoted softly. "That is what Roy said you always used to say." "But you gave me more than safety. You gave me life, real life, full and rich and meaningful. We gave that to each other." Samuel lifted her hand to his lips, kissing it gently. "I was just going through the motions before you, Beatrice, doing my duty but not really living. You taught me what it meant to truly be alive." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and purple and gold. Cattle lowed in the distance. Somewhere on the property, Sarah's children were shouting and playing. The land stretched out before them, unchanged in its basic beauty despite all the years. "I am glad I came west," Beatrice said finally. "I am glad the stagecoach was attacked and you rescued me. I am glad I was brave enough to take a chance on love." "So am I," Samuel said. "Every single day, I am grateful." The sun set slowly, as it always did, painting their familiar world in golden light. They had built something together that would last long after they were gone, in the land they had tended, in the children and grandchildren they had raised, in the community they had helped shape. They had started as strangers thrust together by circumstance, a lawman and a runaway heiress on a dangerous frontier. They had become partners, lovers, friends, parents, and grandparents. They had built a life that mattered, that had meaning beyond wealth or status or anything her Boston upbringing had valued. And as they sat together watching another Texas sunset, their hands clasped and their hearts full, they knew they had found something far more precious than gold. They had found each other, found home, found love that lasted, and that was worth everything. Years later, when they were both gone, their story lived on. The ranch continued under Sarah's children's management, then their children's children. The house remained standing, solid stone and timber just as it had been built. And on the porch where Samuel and Beatrice had spent so many evenings together, their descendants would sit and watch the sunset, and tell stories about the deputy marshal and the Boston heiress, who had built something lasting from courage and love and hard work. The land remembered them in the improvements they had made, in the careful stewardship they had practiced, in the community they had helped build. The town remembered them in the court decisions Samuel had made, in the charity Beatrice had shown, in the example they had set of a partnership based on mutual respect and genuine love. But mostly, they lived on in the simple truth they had discovered together on that wild Texas frontier. That real wealth was not measured in gold or land or status, but in love freely given and gratefully received, in work that mattered and family that endured, in building something together that was greater than either of them could have created alone. And on warm spring evenings when the light turned golden and the cattle lowed in the distance, if you sat very quietly on that old stone porch, you could almost hear their voices, soft and content, reminding each other that they had found everything they needed right here together, on this land they had made their own. The story of Samuel Jensen and Beatrice Parrish was not a tale of dramatic adventure or grand gestures, though it had moments of both. It was a story of quiet courage, of two people who found each other at exactly the right moment and built a life that mattered. It was a story of the frontier, of Texas in the wild years when everything was still being built and anything was possible for those brave enough to reach for it. And it was a love story, pure and simple, the kind of love that sustained through hardship and celebrated in joy. The kind that grew stronger with each passing year rather than fading. The kind that proved, generation after generation, that some things are worth more than gold,